pastor of a church, of a little country church, would always end his services by asking one of the people in the congregation to pray the benediction. And there was one man who was an old farmer in his congregation that he would call upon occasionally to pray the concluding prayer of the service. He would say these words at the end of his prayer, "And Lord, prop us up on our leaning side." After hearing this several times, the pastor pulled him aside and said, "I love the way you pray, and it's great, but I'm curious, what does that phrase mean?" He said, "Well, Pastor, I live out in the country. I'm a farmer." And he said, "I've got an old barn out back." He said, "It's been there a long time, and it's withstood storms and weather and bugs and termites and everything you can imagine. And one day I got out there on my tractor and I looked and I saw that barn and I noticed that it had started to lean. And so what I did was I took some pine beams. I knew that it was leaning, and so I braced them and propped them up on the side that the barn was leaning." It means something in times like these to have the proppings of the Lord when you start to lean. At some point in your life, you lean toward quitting. You lean toward giving up. You lean toward fear. Or maybe it's an addiction in your life and you find yourself after being saved and born again, but you're starting to lean toward that old addiction, that old sin, that old stronghold, and you're leaning. And it's time for you to let God come to you and prop you up on your leaning side. Let his Spirit come. He said, "I'll send the Comforter, the Paraclete," one that literally means, comforter means one called alongside to prop you up on your leaning side. There are homes that are leaning toward divorce, leaning toward trouble, leaning toward hopelessness and despair. And in the middle of it, how are we going to make it through this wilderness? And how you're going to do it? Leaning on your beloved. Who is this coming up out from the wilderness? Leaning, listen to that word, leaning upon her beloved. I guess what I'm trying to preach to you today is God knows how to prop you up on your leaning side. He knows what you're going through, and he's a good God, and he's a big God, and he loves his people, and he loves you, and he knows what you're facing. He knows what you're fearing. He knows what you are feeling, and he'll prop you up on your leaning side. He wants you to make it. He wants you to win. He wants you to overcome. Who's coming up? It's time to come up and come out.